Bill, come and tell us about where the Chinese rockets are going up and down.
Well, my involvement in China started as a young UPI correspondent in southern China in 1979. Went to the Canton Trade Fair and looked at the things that they were trying to sell to the world, and the Chinese had nothing. The streets of Guangzhou in southern China were dark at night, and they had no neon, no lights. They were desperately poor. So what they have been able to achieve in these decades has been the most astonishing assault on global power that the world has ever witnessed. And in just the recent years, it seems to be accelerating. My takeaway from what they've achieved in space recently, they put a craft on Mars, and they've been able to send back images from the surface of Mars. They've landed on the dark side of the moon. They've had put up their own space station, had their astronauts walking in the spacewalk. So this represents the core technologies involved in this. We know there's semiconductors, computers, and satellites, long-term communications, but it's an astonishing assault on the technological leadership that the United States has displayed. To me, this is every bit as stunning as what Sputnik achieved in 1957 and started the American revival, and John F. Kennedy saying, let's put a man on the moon. So the astonishing technological leadership that we've seen demonstrates to me that the Chinese are on par with us now in many technologies. They're still clearly behind in semiconductors, but are working hard in that. And in some areas, they're ahead of us, such as 5G telecommunications, wireless communications. So we should be looking at their gains in space here as a real wake-up call, and we should be implementing an emergency national program to stem the loss of our technology. It appears to me, and I think Greg would agree, that the majority of these gains in recent years have been based on American and Western technology. They have created a system where they can watch our laboratories and watch our institutions as they develop new ideas, and then they can exfiltrate those ideas and develop them faster in China because of the billions of dollars that the Chinese government is putting forth. They don't have the problems of having to secure venture capital funding and go through multiple rounds of that and have such a high rate of failure. If the Chinese government decides it wants to put money behind the technology, billions of dollars flow in very short order. And what Greg was describing about what they're doing in our space program is very similar to what they've done in solar and electric vehicles and other. If the Chinese state-led model, it is a state-led model, and there's been a fusion of the party and the military and the civilian government. They call it the military-civil fusion. If that model is working so well, it's hard to see how we can stop them in space unless we figure out a way to stop them on Earth. And I advocate in my book a grand strategy, countering China, taming technology, and restoring the media, that we have to create a new deal, a new compact between our government and our major technology companies, and begin to stop the hemorrhaging that the cyber attacks are causing. Our companies and our system is wide open. We're essentially defenseless against the Chinese who have learned how to engage in, they can penetrate our cloud computing systems. They know how to engage in the software supply chain attacks. We've seen recently with SolarWinds, and we see in many other sectors. In fact, they created these techniques in China. The golden text was the software that every company in China has to download to file their taxes in China, and so you have to use that. And so over time, they started downloading malware and did updates on the software. So the Chinese have penetrated our IT systems partly through our American companies in China, but also their Ministry of State Security is openly using tools in the United States to look for unidentified or known vulnerabilities in our software system. Then they can place Trojan horses or shells in those companies and get access to them. The other major source of our loss of technology is through human intelligence, and through we really need to wake up to the fact that we have a first-class problem in dealing with the presence of 360 or 370,000 Chinese students in our most advanced research laboratories. It's only recently that we figured out that many of these students were working for the PLA. They were secretly officers in the PLA, the People's Liberation Army. And so that we've been able to make some headway on that. I would say the vast majority of Chinese students who've come here want to get an education, work for an American company, or go back home and work for one of their companies. And that's fair game. That's the way the international systems work for decades. What's not part and parcel of anything that I would regard as acceptable is that if those Chinese students go to work for American companies, the Chinese Ministry of State Security approaches them, particularly if they have family back in China, and says, work with us to obtain certain technologies. And it's clear that if the family is at risk, the family will be at risk if the Chinese student or the Chinese individual with access to the technology doesn't cooperate. And they can wait decades. They can wait until somebody's in their 40s or 50s before they make that approach. So in our pre-calls, I've heard Greg say that we want to prevent the Chinese from getting into space, and let it be us who goes and creates the colonial structure of space. But I fail to see how we're getting serious yet about stopping the hemorrhaging of technology that will enable the Chinese and their state-led model to run even with us, if not accelerate and not defeat us in space.